Brennan Jace had no idea why the Interstellar Council singled him out. He was a dog trainer, not a diplomat, not a xenolinguist, just a guy with a German shepherd named Harlan and a lot of patience. So when the sleek humming glide craft landed in the middle of a Nevada dog park, and 4 towering figures stepped out, each with skin like oxidized copper and eyes that shimmered like oil slicks, he assumed they were there for the Air Force base nearby. They were not. "You are Brennan Jace," the tallest one said. Its voice sounded like 2 tones being played at once, one low and one high. "You are the guardian of the terrestrial apex predator, classified as Canis lupus familiaris." Brennan glanced down at Harlan, who was sitting politely beside him, panting and wagging his tail. "Guardian? Yeah, I guess. This is Harlan. He's my dog." The alien took a cautious step back. "Contain it." Brennan raised an eyebrow. "He's not gonna hurt you." The 3 others had already backed up, forming a triangle around the tall one. Their hands hovered near the weapons strapped to their chests. Brennan instinctively put a hand on Harlan's collar, not because Harlan needed controlling, but because these guys seemed ready to start a war over a tail wag. "You misunderstand the peril," the tall one said. "This creature's predatory efficiency is unmatched on over 82 surveyed worlds. Its jaw strength alone exceeds that of the Phyraxian cliffstalker. It has been observed coordinating attacks, feigning submission, and manipulating human emotions for social leverage." Brennan blinked. "Social leverage? It deceives to obtain food and shelter. It exhibits loyalty only when rewarded." Brennan looked at Harlan, who had now rolled over onto his back, tongue lolling, pawing at a butterfly. "Yeah, real master manipulator." The alien didn't laugh. None of them did. "I think you guys have the wrong idea," Brennan said carefully. "Dogs are companions. They're not dangerous unless you train them to be." The tall one's head tilted. "You? Play games with it?" "Yeah, watch." Brennan reached into his backpack and pulled out a neon green tennis ball. Harlan's ears perked up. Brennan tossed the ball across the field. Harlan shot off like a rocket, legs pumping, tongue flapping in the wind. The aliens flinched. Harlan snatched the ball mid-bounce and trotted back, tail wagging, dropping the ball at Brennan's feet. "He just wants to play fetch." The tall alien leaned forward, scanning Harlan with a small silver device that emitted a soft whine. "Impossible. This creature is capable of disemboweling a Threxian sand gorger." "I don't know what that is," Brennan said, "but I promise you, Harlan's biggest threat is drooling on your boots. We must reevaluate." They didn't leave. Instead, they set up what could only be described as an impromptu containment dome around Brennan's modest house on the outskirts of Reno. Gleaming panels rose from the ground, shimmering with blue energy. Every morning, a different alien delegation arrived, each one more alarmed than the last. Brennan tried to go about his life. He still walked Harlan, still worked on basic obedience with the neighborhood dogs, still watched reruns of old sitcoms in the evenings. But now his backyard was bordered by alien surveillance drones, and his mailbox had been fused shut for safety protocol. One morning, while Brennan was sipping coffee on the porch, a squat, beetle-shaped alien with 4 eyes and a voice like a gravel blender approached him nervously. "I am Drulux of the Grayan Syndicate," it said. "I am here to conduct a behavioral analysis." "Of me or my dog?" "Both." Harlan let out a bark and bounded over. Drulux shrieked and dropped its datapad. "Relax," Brennan said. "He's just excited to see new people." "Explain the vocal emission." "It's a bark. It means he's happy." Drulux stared at Harlan, who was now sitting obediently, tail sweeping the porch. "He makes such noise when happy." "Yeah, he also wags his tail. That's how you can tell with dogs." Drulux nodded slowly, then scribbled notes on a floating screen. "This is deeply troubling." Over the next few weeks, Brennan became the unwilling epicenter of an interstellar panic. Delegates from over 20 species visited. Some brought translators, others brought weapons. One delegation wore full body armor and refused to step within 50 feet of Harlan. Brennan tried to be patient, but it got old fast. "I get that you're freaked out," he told a serpentine being named Yezel who had coiled itself around his mailbox post. "But Harlan's not going to hurt anyone." Yezel watched Harlan chasing a butterfly through the grass with narrowed eyes. "I observed 2 hours of footage," Yezel hissed. "Your dog was seen intercepting a thrown object with tactical precision, returning it with unwavering loyalty, and repeating the task with no sign of mental fatigue. This level of task repetition is common in slave caste labor species." Brennan scoffed. "He's not a slave, he just likes fetch." Yezel's eyes narrowed further. "Even more disturbing. The real trouble started when a delegation from the Zarn Collective arrived. The Zarn weren't interested in observation. They came in a black craft shaped like a broken compass and marched onto Brennan's front lawn with stun rifles and containment crates. "We will neutralize the threat," their leader announced. Brennan stepped in front of Harlan. Whoa, hold on. You can't just take him." "This creature cannot remain on a populated world. Its potential for devastation is incalculable." Harlan barked once and sat. The leader flinched. "Harlan is not a weapon," Brennan said firmly. "He's a dog. He plays fetch. He chews socks. He's afraid of the vacuum cleaner." The Zarn leader raised a hand. "You are too close to recognize the danger. Stand aside." Brennan didn't move. "You'll have to go through me." The leader signaled. 2 soldiers advanced, rifles raised. Brennan backed up, lifting his arms. Okay, don't shoot." Harlan didn't bark or growl. He didn't lunge. He simply walked forward and sat between Brennan and the soldiers, staring up at them with his tongue out. One soldier hesitated. The other lowered his rifle. The leader shouted something in a guttural tone. Before anyone could react, a net shot out from the craft and enveloped Harlan. He let out a startled yelp. "No!" Brennan dove forward, trying to pry the net off. "Let him go!" The energy in the net pulsed, knocking Brennan back. He slammed into the grass, ribs aching. He coughed and tried to get up, but the world tilted sideways. "You're making a mistake," he gasped. The Zarn ignored him. The net lifted into the air, drawing Harlan up toward the ship. Then something unexpected happened. Harlan bit through the net. The strands snapped like dry spaghetti. He dropped 10 feet, landed in a roll, and bounded back to Brennan's side. Despite the stun charge, despite the altitude, he was unharmed. The Zarn stared. Harlan sat down and barked. The bark echoed across the containment dome. The leader took a step back. Brennan clutched his side. "Told you he was tough." The Zarn didn't try again. 2 days later, the Interstellar Council convened in a temporary chamber built on the edge of Brennan's property. The delegates argued for hours. Brennan sat outside with Harlan, sipping Gatorade, ribs taped, painkillers doing only half the job. Eventually, the tall alien from the first visit emerged. "We have come to a consensus," it said. "Yeah. We have determined that the creature's danger lies not in its strength but in its influence." Brennan frowned. "What does that mean?" "It has domesticated you." Brennan looked down at Harlan. The dog was chewing on a stick, tail wagging. "Guess he has." The alien paused. "We request further data. The Council has authorized a study. You and your Harlan will accompany us as cultural exchange representatives." Brennan rubbed his temples. "You want me to take my dog to space?" "Yes." He looked at Harlan. "Fetch," he said. Harlan barked and stood up. Brennan sighed. "Fine, but I'm not cleaning up after him in zero gravity." The first thing Brennan noticed aboard the alien vessel was the absence of any corners. Everything curved. The walls sloped gently into the floor, which arced up into the ceiling like they were inside some kind of polished seashell. The air tasted faintly metallic, like licking a battery. Harlan sniffed a panel near the entrance, sneezed, then looked up at Brennan with mild betrayal. "I know, buddy, I miss drywall too." A small, floating orb hovered beside them, translating instructions through a soft chime and a flicker of symbols across the curved wall. Brennan didn't understand any of it, but when he hesitated, The orb nudged him gently toward a hallway lit with pulsing green lights. He followed. Harlan trotted alongside him without hesitation, nails clicking against the warm, rubbery floor. The hallway opened into a chamber the size of a basketball court, though Brennan couldn't find a single identifiable feature. No chairs, no screens, no vents, just a shimmering field of blue light in the center, and a semicircle of 5 aliens standing silently beyond it. They looked nothing like the delegates from Earth, taller, thinner, and with skin like dark glass filled with stars. They didn't move, but Brennan could feel their attention settle on him, like a thermal camera locking on. "Is there like a welcome pamphlet or something?" he asked. The orb buzzed disapprovingly and hovered into the center of the blue field. It pulsed once, and a 3-dimensional projection of Harlan sprang to life above it. The hologram showed him running, leaping, catching a ball mid-air, and returning it with tail-wagging enthusiasm. One of the aliens spoke. Its voice bypassed Brennan's ears and landed directly in his skull. "Demonstrate the sequence." "You want a live show?" The orb buzzed again. Brennan reached into the side pouch of his hoodie and pulled out the same chewed-up tennis ball he'd brought from Earth. Harlan's ears perked. He sat, eyes locked on the ball. "You sure this is what you want to see? Not like quantum physics or a TED Talk or something?" No response. "All right, but I'm billing you guys for the kibble." He tossed the ball. It bounced once, then twice, before Harlan streaked after it with a single-minded focus that belonged more to a missile than a mammal. He caught it in mid-hop and looped back around, tail swishing like a windshield wiper. Depositing the ball at Brennan's feet, he sat and stared up at him, tongue lolling. The aliens didn't react. The orb spun slowly, then projected a second image, a creature with 4 arms, jagged teeth, and a tail like an axe blade. It was sprinting through a forest of red grass, tearing through obstacles. The projection rewound and played again, this time overlaying Harlan's earlier run. They were nearly identical. The glass-skinned alien on the left finally spoke. This behavior mirrors attack drills used by the Melnock Predator caste. Yet, the creature exhibits joy? "Yeah," Brennan said. "That's called fun. He's not going for blood, he's going for a ball." Another alien stepped forward, its body shifting colors as it moved. The lack of coercion is anomalous. "Well, yeah, he wants to do it. That's kind of the point." The alien's eyes, if you could call them that, glowed briefly, then dimmed. "Voluntary repetition without reward. That is not accounted for in existing behavioral models." "I mean, there's a reward," Brennan said, holding up the ball. "It's this. You throw it again." The aliens fell silent again. One of them extended a thin arm and pointed at Harlan. "It has bound itself to you." Brennan shrugged. "We're a team." Over the next several hours, he had no idea how many, exactly. Since there were no clocks or windows, Brennan and Harlan were passed from chamber to chamber, each one more elaborate than the last. In one, thin platforms rose from the floor, and Harlan was asked to navigate them while chasing a ball. In another, he was gently placed in low gravity and observed as he bounded awkwardly through the air, ears flopping like sails. In every scenario, Harlan adapted. He didn't hesitate, didn't panic. He'd sniff the environment, look at Brennan for confirmation, and go. Brennan didn't speak commands. Most of the time he didn't need to. A glance, a nod, a change in posture was enough. They didn't always succeed on the first try, but Harlan never gave up. Eventually, Brennan was led into a dim chamber, separated from Harlan by a transparent barrier. He wasn't told why. The only thing inside was a single alien shorter than the others, with a shimmering cowl and a device that looked suspiciously like a clipboard. It spoke in a tone that was less threatening and more weary. "You were not selected at random. You are the statistical anomaly." Brennan scratched the back of his head. "Is that a good thing?" "You persist in illogical behavior. Injured, you shielded the creature. You refused to surrender it to superior force. You refused even under threat of pain. You're talking about loyalty. Look, I didn't sign up for a philosophy class, but you don't abandon your dog just because things get weird." The alien tilted its head. "Let me guess," Brennan said. "You don't have dogs where you're from. We do not form bonds with subdominant species. Maybe you should." There was a pause. Then the alien pressed something on the clipboard device. The wall between them shimmered and vanished. Harlan trotted in, tail wagging, and immediately pressed himself against Brennan's leg. Brennan scratched behind his ears. "You okay, buddy?" Harlan gave a soft chuff and sat. The alien watched, unmoving. After a while it said he did not resist when separated, but his heart rate increased. He refused food. He remained oriented toward the last location of your scent. Brennan knelt and looked at Harlan. "You little sap." Another voice interrupted from above. "We have concluded the primary phase of analysis. You will be debriefed." The floor shifted beneath them and began to lower, smooth as an elevator but entirely silent. Brennan glanced around. "That's it? Just a bunch of tests and now we're done?" "Not done," the voice corrected. "Understood." The platform brought them into a chamber that looked different than the others, warmer. The walls shimmered with soft colors, and instead of sterile surfaces, there were shapes and textures that evoked something closer to comfort. A table, a raised platform that looked suspiciously like a dog bed, a dispenser with water. A second orb floated over and chirped. "Is this our room now?" A habitat, calibrated to your environmental preferences. Brennan looked at Harlan, who had already sniffed the faux dog bed and flopped into it with a satisfied grunt. "All right," Brennan muttered. "First contact diplomacy by fetch. I guess that's a thing now." Later, he wasn't sure how much later, but long enough for him to nap and for Harlan to cycle through 3 sleep positions, he was summoned again. This time to what he assumed was a briefing hall, except instead of chairs, there were floating platforms. Instead of a podium, there was a pulsing sphere of light crackling quietly in the center. A dozen aliens, none of whom he recognized, floated into place around it. The one nearest to him addressed him directly. "You have demonstrated a phenomenon previously unrecorded in our archives. Cooperative instinct that rivals genetic programming, behavioral flexibility under stress, voluntary cross-species loyalty." Brennan folded his arms. "You say that like you didn't think it was possible. It was considered a myth. Creatures trained to serve, yes, but bonded, no, not without control, not without manipulation." "Humans don't need mind control to care about something," Brennan said. "We're weird like that." The alien nearest the sphere flicked a tendril toward the light. It pulsed, then warped into an image of Earth from orbit. "We request extended observation, not of Harlan, of you." Brennan raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was just the guy holding the leash." "You are the anomaly." He looked at the image of Earth, then at the aliens surrounding him, then at the orb hovering quietly by his shoulder. "What's the pay?" There was silence. "I'm gonna need snacks," Brennan added, "and a couch. Harlan's gonna need something to chew on that doesn't glow." The orb zipped off, chirping furiously. Brennan glanced down at his dog, who had followed him in without hesitation and was now staring at the crackling sphere with mild suspicion. "Could be worse," Brennan muttered. "At least they're not trying to vaporize us anymore." From somewhere behind him a voice replied, "That was vote-dependent." He turned. A small, beetle-shaped alien different from the one on Earth was watching him with what might have been amusement. Brennan sighed. "Please tell me you brought coffee." "I brought questions." "Figure. I reviewed your medical file. Your rib was fractured. You refuse regeneration treatment." "I didn't trust the machine. You allowed the injury to heal naturally." "Yeah, that is inefficient." "That's being human." The alien blinked slowly. "We have much to learn." "You're telling me?" Brennan looked down at Harlan. "You guys haven't even seen him try to climb a slide yet." The day started with an alarm that wasn't an alarm. A low-frequency tone rippled through Brennan's quarters, followed by a subtle shift in the room's ambient hue, from a soft amber to a crisp clinical white. Harlan was already awake, staring at the wall where the sound had originated, ears perked. Brennan sat up on the platform bed and winced. His ribs had healed, but the sleep surface was firmer than he liked, and his shoulders didn't appreciate the alien idea of a pillow. The orb floated in through a seamless opening in the wall. It hovered, pulsed once, and projected a small glyph that blinked red and green in alternating flashes. "Let me guess," Brennan mumbled. "You want me to get dressed?" The orb emitted a brief chirp that he had come to interpret as impatience. By the time he'd pulled on the uniform they'd provided, a single piece of soft fiber that sealed without fasteners, Harlan was pacing near the exit panel. Brennan snapped his fingers and the dog fell in beside him, tail held high. The corridor outside was busier than usual. Several small, angular creatures zipped by on suspended rails overhead, carrying data slates in translucent containers shaped like teardrops. One of them dropped a container which shattered mid-air into harmless mist. No one seemed concerned. The orb led Brennan and Harlan toward a large chamber he hadn't been invited into before. The entryway was flanked by two tall guards, their bodies segmented like armor-plated fungi. Neither acknowledged them. Inside, the air was cooler. A long table stretched down the center of the room, surrounded by dozens of species he hadn't seen yet. A few turned to look. Most didn't. The tall, glass-skinned figure from before stood at the head. "We have completed the behavioral study," it said, not looking at Brennan. "This final demonstration will determine the outcome of the committee's vote. No further observations will follow." Brennan frowned. "You're making this sound like a sentencing. We require certainty." He folded his arms. "I thought you already had it. You saw what you needed." Another alien, shorter and covered in what looked like moss, spoke up. "We saw what you allowed us to see. Now we require stress variables." Stress variables? Disruption, disorientation, unstructured interference. Brennan narrowed his eyes. "You're going to mess with him." "Not harm," said another. "Challenge." A section of the wall dissolved, revealing a vast dome filled with terrain hills of synthetic rock, winding tunnels, pools of shimmering water, and small automated drones shaped like insects. It looked like a cross between a training ground and an obstacle course. "This is ridiculous," Brennan muttered. "He's a dog, not a contestant." "The test begins in 4 minutes. He looked down at Harlan, who was watching the terrain with quiet focus. "Can I go in with him?" "No. Your influence distorts baseline behavior." Brennan crouched and laid his hands on Harlan's shoulders. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to. Just ignore the buzzing things, stay calm." Harlan licked Brennan's chin once, then trotted toward the entrance of the dome. The panel sealed behind him. The terrain pulsed softly as the test began. At first it was simple. A rolling sphere passed in front of Harlan. He gave it a sniff, then moved on. A gust of cold air blew from a concealed vent. He paused, sniffed again, then continued toward a small platform with a raised perch. Then the floor shifted. A section sank beneath him and rose again like a slow-motion wave. Harlan adjusted, claws finding grip, posture low. Drones zipped overhead, emitting high-pitched tones. One buzzed close to his flank. He turned, snapped at it not to destroy, but to warn, and it veered away. Brennan watched from the observation window, fists clenched. "He's not a machine. You can't just throw noise and expect obedience." "He adapts," someone noted, "without aggression, without delay." Another drone approached Harlan, this one dragging a small, glowing cube. It emitted a low whine that made Brennan's teeth ache. Harlan growled once deep, and even then circled the cube, sniffed it, and sat beside it. "He's waiting," Brennan said. "He's not reacting. He's thinking." The moss-covered alien leaned forward. "This is not instinct. No, it's trust. He knows I'm still nearby, that this isn't real danger, that whatever this is, it ends." There was silence. Then the terrain shifted again. A sudden jarring shift, half the dome plunged into darkness, and a high-speed fan activated, sweeping dust and debris into the air. Brennan's heart pounded. Harlan was gone from sight. "Stop the simulation," Brennan said. No one replied. A shape moved through the dust, low, fast, deliberate. Harlan emerged from the shadows, eyes narrowed, coat matted with fine particles. He didn't bark, he didn't bolt. He lowered his body and moved forward, step by step, until he reached the glowing cube again. He picked it up gently in his mouth and carried it to the edge of the terrain, placing it on a flat surface next to the entrance panel. Then he sat. The terrain powered down. Lights returned to normal. The wall opened. Harlan walked out, tail relaxed, trotting over to Brennan without hesitation. Brennan knelt. "You all right, bud?" Harlan licked his wrist and leaned his weight against Brennan's chest. The glass-skinned alien stepped forward. "The test has concluded." Brennan didn't look up. "So what now?" "We have revised our understanding." He stood, one hand on Harlan's collar. "You thought you were testing a creature. You were testing a relationship. That's what you didn't get." The moss alien tilted its head. "You claim this connection is not taught, not imposed. It's built. Over time, with patience. You can't simulate that." There was a ripple of color across the chamber walls. A subtle signal Brennan had learned meant agreement. The glass-skinned figure turned toward the assembly. "No vote is required. The findings are accepted unanimously." Another alien, tall and draped in layered silk-like material, approached Brennan. "We will archive the behavioral sequences. We will study the interaction models, but we will not attempt replication. That path is not ours." Brennan exhaled slowly. "Then we're done? You may return to your world." He looked down at Harlan. "I think we've both earned it." Later, aboard a smaller transport vessel bound for orbital transit, Brennan sat beside a wide viewing panel, Earth coming into focus below. The planet shimmered blue and green, swirling with cloud systems like slow-moving brushstrokes. A small, beetle-shaped alien settled beside him, one of the few who had observed without speaking. "You showed us something simple," it said quietly. Brennan glanced sideways. "That's what you needed?" "It was not what we expected." He gave a tired chuckle. "You expected monsters, you got fetch." The alien clicked its mouthparts together softly. "We expected control. You gave us partnership." Harlan, curled at Brennan's feet, snored gently. "So," Brennan said, leaning back against the seat, "you gonna tell the rest of the galaxy we're not as terrifying as we seem?" The beetle creature blinked slowly. "You are terrifying, not because of your weapons, because of what you choose to love." Brennan looked down at Harlan. "Yeah," he said, "that's fair." The ship dipped into re-entry trajectory. They didn't speak again. There wasn't a need.